These little stories that makes you think of another one, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure I told you this story about the lady that went to heaven
Oh my
to the
land.
pearly gates.
This reminds me of my mother's mother, my grandmother.
Do you remember this? Do you remember this story?
No.
Well, this lady went up to the pearly gates, and when St. Peter saw her, he said, I know you've got a good life, but to get in, you're going to have to take a test. He said, a test? Now, what kind of a test? She said, well, it's a spelling test. She said, well, what do I have to spell? He said, you pick the word. She said, okay, love, L-O-V-E. He said, good, come on in. He said, now then, I want you to stay here at the gate because I'll have to leave. She said, I don't know what to do. He said, just do like I did. She said, all right. So she's there by herself, and she looked in the distance, and somebody saw somebody coming. When he got closer, it was her husband. When he got close enough, she said, what are you doing here? He said, well, I went to your funeral, but on the way home I had an automobile accident, I got killed. She said, well, to get in here, you're going to have to take a test. He said, a test? What kind? He said, a spelling test. He said, well, what do I have to spell? She said, Czechoslovakia.
See, my grandmother lived there. I mean, that's where
said,
that's her ancestry.
I've been in big trouble. I've been in big trouble.
I could never spell it. I would have been true. I tell you who could is Aiden. He is a very good speller.
Good.
Now, did I tell you the one about Forrest Gump?
No.
Well, Forrest Gump went up to the pearly gates.
Uh-huh.
And when St. Peter saw him, said, I know you. Said, you've lived a good life, but said, to get in here, you're going to have to take a test. He said, a test? What kind? Said, well, it's just 3 questions. He said, okay, what's the questions? So, all right, so the first question is, what 2 days in the week starts with T? He said, okay. And the second question is, how many seconds are there in a year? He said, okay. The third question is, what is God's first name? He said, okay. He said, now you think about it, we'll give you the test tomorrow. He said, okay. So the next day they said to him, said, are you ready to take the test? Yeah. He said, okay, the first question is, what 2 days in a week starts with T? He said, well, that'd be pretty easy. He said, that'd be today and tomorrow. He said, well, that's not what we were really thinking about, but that's true. Now the second question is, how many seconds are there in a year? He said, well, there's 12. 12? Now how do you come up with 12? Well, it says there's a 2nd of January, 2nd of February, 2nd of March. It's 12. It's 12 seconds in a year. And I said, that's true, but that's not what we were thinking about. So now the third question is, what is God's first name? He said, God's name is Andy. First name is Andy. And it said, Andy, now how did you come up with that? He said, you know that song, Andy walked with me and he talked with me.
That's a good one.
He's full of jokes.
I love it.
But see, my grandmother married, and when my grandfather died and her children were young, my mother was going into 1st grade. And no, Aunt Helen was just born. My mother would be 2.5, 3 years old. But she still stayed on Franklin Street in their home. He had a lot of money, but she didn't know it. And the house and everything was real nice back then. They had garden and chicken house and whatever was allowed in the town they could have. So then after he died, she stayed there until my mother finished 1st grade in school. Then she decided to move back to the farms where the rest of the family members were.
Mm-hmm.
You know where I mean, down here.
Mm-hmm.
So the Warwick Mansion, the land next to it, the first house was a great big white 4-story, counting the cellar, 3 stories over a cellar. Beautiful mansion. So she purchased that. But Junior Davis told me years later that she had enough money, he had enough money in the bank for their family to buy 7 of those farms. So she didn't have to worry. She had plenty of money.
Right.
So when my mother got engaged in 1929 to my dad, she liked living there. But she never did say anything. She just let my dad take care of all those plans. And after they got engaged, my grandmother told him her plan, her thoughts. And he said, well, I'll farm your farm for you if Kitty wants to stay here and live.
Uh-huh.
I'll farm the farm for you until you sell it. And then I'll move on back over by Suicide. I'll farm both of them. See? And he was helping his father, and he would help her too. So he did that. They did that. And that's how come I was 4.5 years old before she sold it.
Right.
And that's when we moved over to the other farm. Now, what was I going to say, Jimmy? What were we talking about before I started this?
We were telling jokes. Papa was telling jokes about, the last one was Forrest Gump
Yeah.
going to heaven.
What would I be telling her this for?
Well, you used to tell a story about your grandmother because he had all these farms and your grandfather wasted the money away.
Oh, yeah. So after, let's see, my Aunt Elsie, I don't know how old my mother was when,
Somebody she had enough money to buy 7 farms.
yeah, I don't know how old my mother was when my grandmother met Paul Eckert from Pennsylvania.
Right.
And he decided that he would like to marry my grandmother, even
Right.
though she had all these children.
Right.
So then when he moved down here, he kept his boat right down on the Choptank River at the edge of their farm, and he was a waterman, and he kept his boat there, and he had a little building down there that he kept all of his fish nets and everything, so it wouldn't be up on the farm, it would be down there. And he worked in the water, and he made money too, and he helped to do the farming. But my mother's oldest sister married Uncle Lloyd, and they were married in the Warwick Mansion.
Mm-hmm.
And Jean was born there. And during those years, Uncle Lloyd farmed my grandmother's land. See? And because he didn't know much about farming, but he did do whatever they needed him to do. Down there, she had cows and horses and chickens, and she had everything you needed to work a farm with.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, when Mother and Daddy got married and came back from Niagara Falls, they went there on their honeymoon, and they came back to there. And my grandmother had all the things that she was going to take with her, and she had moved them already over to Harlech, where George and Elsie were old enough. Elsie was going to be graduating from high school that year. Now, they were Paul Eckert's 2 children. And she never saw much of him.
Mm-hmm.
He soon kept his boat in the Cambridge Yacht Club, his work boat. So he would drive a vehicle down to Cambridge and get in his work boat there and go out in the river and work.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally, when she decided to move, she went to the bank and all of her money was gone. He had bought that boat with it and all of his fish nets, and he had used up all of her money.
What a terrible person.
So my dad saw to it that she got settled in Harlech, which wasn't, much expense then. And
So at that time, your mom and dad had already gotten married.
yeah,
And your dad is the part of your family that's from Czechoslovakia.
they both are.
Or they both are,
Yeah,
right?
both families are. Yeah, and I'm writing the history now of Dorchester County and now of our family and all. And I've got all of that written down. I'm going to try to get it.
I'd love to read it.
Yeah, when I get it so you can understand it all, I'll give it to you. I'll give you copies.
I'd love it.
I want to do it before I die. I figured I've got this in my brain and I may as well let it out before I die.
Oh, I know.
Be ashamed not to.
I don't like to think about it because I just love you both so much.
Well,
And
after that doctor the other day in the hospital told me, did I tell you that story?
no.
That I couldn't breathe?
Yeah, yes.
And so when I woke up from the everything, and the doctor found out what my problem was,
Whew.
the first thing he said to me was, say a prayer thanking God that these blood clots didn't go to your brain.
Yes.
See? So, I mean, it could be any day for either one of us.
I know.
So I want to hurry up and get that done. He keeps complaining that I'm at too much at the computer, but I want to get it done before it's too late. Even though he's trying to wait for his 98 Oldsmobile. It'd be nice if we could. There's a lot of people who do.
Yeah. Well, you're both just so cute.
We have a good time. We've
We do.
always had fun.
Yeah.
I don't know of any argument we ever had. Do you? You don't hear me. We never ever had an argument. Because we always tried to figure out things, you know, why did this happen, you know, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
My father always said there's enough trouble in this world to go around, everybody has some.
Yeah. It's true.
Can you remember anything bad we had happen to us that we
Well,
argued over?
We've had a lot more good things, I think, than the bad things.
Yeah.
You know.
I don't even know of any. It's so few, I don't remember them.
Yeah.
And not important.
Yeah.
And then even one day, I talked his mother into going to church with me. And I put her up in the choir so nobody would see her and she wouldn't be embarrassed if she knew somebody, you know, and seeing me in a Catholic church, you know, and I felt sorry for her, so I put her up in the choir so it wouldn't embarrass her. And do you know what she told Tommy and Susan
What'd she tell him?
and Marion when she was dying? They went to see her. Your mother's church is the right one.
Mm-hmm.
She learned it after she saw one mass. She knew enough about God to know that that was true,
Right.
but had never seen that before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
See,
She's never been there.
In her religion, she didn't know anything about that.
Right.
And I've been doing some research on Jesus' second coming. Have you done any?
A little bit.
What have you learned?
That it's kind of like birth pains, like labor pains, and there will be rumors of wars and fires and destruction and brother against brother and sister against sister and mother, you know.
Where do you find that? I've never seen that, and I've found a lot of stuff.
That's in Revelations.
Okay. Well, it's going to be his second coming. And all of the people who lived right, which I've been trying to do all these years.
Yeah.
um,
You mean the rapture?
God has kept the souls of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And they will be returned to bones that he is going to restore.
Mm-hmm.
Our bones, our regular bones that we died.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to return our souls back in them.
What about people who've been cremated?
They're going to, if they passed to go with God.
Oh.
So you have to be a good person here.
Right.
In order to win. So all of the people who are going with God will live forever and ever, no end. Happy.
When I hear you talk about it, it would remind me something. Robbie was telling Marion, and Marion was telling us, and Aubrey was telling me about it, and Robbie's little boy's been going to just Sunday school
Catholic
or this
school.
church school or something.
No, it's Catholic school, like Marion teaches in.
Well,
Only it's
anyway,
over down in Princess Anne, and
little Jack come home and
where they live.
told Robbie, said something like, Dad said, the teacher told him that, said the teacher told me that my soul
No,
was in
the
my
teacher
heart.
announced it to the class. It was part of their homework. Now, go ahead.
They said that my soul is in my heart, and I don't want my soul in my heart. I don't want nothing in my heart.
See, he's going to be a doctor, and he's learned all of the parts of your body,
Right.
and he wants them all to be perfect.
Right.
And that teacher didn't make me very happy today. I don't want anything in my heart.
Just my heart. Nothing in my heart. I don't want my soul in my heart. Oh, he's so
And you know,
cute.
Laura, when I see you curl your hair like that,
Yes.
Eddie would do that. He would curl his hair, and he would curl Johnny's hair. They'd
Yeah.
both be sucking their bottles, and he'd be curling Johnny's hair, and he'd be curling his hair.
It might be, it might be a genetic thing.
I think it is.
You know, isn't it amazing how